Hi, so now we're going to actually draw the shape defined by the drawing instructions that we pass into the database or out of the database. So now here we are in View Did Appear within the Detail View controller. So we remember that we're setting the drawing instructions to the return value of a method here called parse draw order. So let's look at that method. Here is parse draw order. All we're doing here is getting that string, that NS string, into an array that we're going to pass into detail drawing so that detail drawing can draw the array. So we set up an NS mutable array of draw instructions because we're going to be adding drawing instructions. And this is a mutable array, and we've just guessed, we've initialized it with a capacity of 10. Then we have an NS array called first parse. NS strings are capable of tokenizing themselves, if you will, using a method called components separated by string. So components separated by string will take the components within that string and separate the whatever we send that method to, the string we send that method to, which is also called, as we already know, the receiver. It will separate the receiver into an array of strings, each of which is the component without the separator string. So if we take self p draw order and call components separated by string colon, what we do is we split that string into an array of strings, each of which is the component. And then each of that is going to be separated by another array called second parse. Second parse is going to separate it on commas. So now if we look at the main view controller initialization statements, we have a draw order here. So the first parse is going to be 1001, 5, 00, 100, 0, 100, 100, 0, 100, and 0, 0, and that will be our array. And then the second parse is going to be each separate piece of each of those components. So 1, 0, 0, 1, 5, and so on. So if we look at the return value, this was our triangular area. If we look at that, as we're looking at, the result of that parse method is 0, 0, 1, 1, 4, 50, 0, and so forth. And it corresponds exactly with 0, 0, 1, 1, 4, 50, 0, 0, 100, 100, 150, 0. And that's exactly what we have here. So let's go back to where that parsing occurs. That's in our detail view controller. So now once we have that second parse, we just add each object as a number with float, with the value coming in for each value in second parse, boxed up as a float value into an NS number. Because NS arrays have to be arrays of objects, not of primitive types. A floating point number is a primitive type. We need to box it up as an NS number, which is an object. And then we just return draw instructions. I have a couple of NS log statements to show the log out of second parse and the log out of draw instructions, but I've commented those out. If you want to look at this happening as it happens, you can look at these logs. So now then in View Did Appear, I set the detail drawing instructions array to the result of that, and then I add subview to this controller's view, detail view controller's view of the self detail drawing. So when I get to detail drawing, remember that the initialization is just initializing it with a frame. So the frame of the detail drawing is the context rectangle within detail view controller that I set up. So that, let's look at that again one more time. That frame is 110, 260. Remember that our y coordinates are increasing from the top to the bottom. So 110, 260, 100, and 100. This is 110x and 260y of the top left coordinate, and then 100, 100 are the width and the height. And this is within the context of the detail view controller's view, not the bounds of the detailed drawing. When we get over to detailed drawing, we're drawing within the bounds of that UI view itself. But when we set up the rectangle, we need to set that rectangle up within the context of the frame of the detailed view controller. So here we're using frame coordinates. Within detailed drawing itself, we will use bound coordinates, which are always 0 based for their top left corner. So now let's go ahead and get into detailed drawing, because this is where the drawing actually occurs. So I've synthesized my drawing instructions, and we already know how we get that array here. So now the first thing we do, I'm logging out the drawing instructions, and this is where in DrawRect, this is where these drawing instructions are getting logged out. So this is where I'm getting this log of this array. So this is not really all that important to see every time, so let's just comment that out. But of course you can remember that we have this log statement and uncomment it if you want to see this in listing. The next thing we do is we get a context, and we always get contexts to draw on by using UI Graphics Get Current Context. Now remember that all of these C primitive drawing functions are pretty wordy. So they tell you what they're doing, and this is a C API. CG float, as we see here, this is just a type def to a float. But CG core graphics, every time you see CG context, CG float, CG point, a point is a C struct of 2 CG floats. CG rect is a C struct of 4 CG floats, and so on. So we set up red, green, blue, and alpha from the 0, 1st, 2nd, and 3rd value in our drawing instruction array. This is one way to do it. But again, we parsed out from our model, the database, string directly into an NS array of floats. Then we get the number of points. I've commented this out because right now I'm not using this number, but I can envision a time in complex drawings where we want to see, before we got into this, the number of points and use it as a counter. But for right now, I set the RGB fill color to our red, green, blue, and alpha values that we just got, and then I draw the shape. And I've got a long comment here that tells you how we're doing this. Each point, as we know, is a pair of XY coordinates starting at index 5. Okay, 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4 are the red, green, blue, alpha, and the number of points. So index 5 is going to start the actual point, and each one is a pair. Each time through this loop, our I is going to index the X coordinate, and I plus 1 is going to index the Y coordinate. So first, we move to the first XY coordinate, and then draw each line in the loop, using our primitive CG context move to point and CG context add line to point. So the first point, X is going to be the object at index 5, and Y is the object at index 6, and then we move to that point to start our path. So within our drawing instructions, we create a path that we're going to draw, and then we either stroke the path if we're drawing a hollow unfilled object, or fill the path. So I have set my RGB fill color to context red, green, blue, and alpha, and now I move to the first point, context X and Y, and now I have a 4. Int I starts at 7. We've got 5 and 6 already drawn. Int I starts at 7, and we're going through while I is less than the count of our drawing instructions, not less than or equal to, because we would be off by 1 there. And then we add 2 each time through the loop to I. So we set X equal to our drawing instructions array, the object at index I as a float, and we set Y as the object at index I plus 1 as a float, and then we add the line to the point X, Y. That gives us our line to point. And then we fill the path we just created. CG context fill path context. And that is all we need to do. And what happens is that as it gets drawn, let's go to the triangle. As it gets drawn, we can see that the triangle is actually being drawn right here in DrawRect by taking that parsed out array from the string that came from the database, because we put it in right here in main view controller. In fact, we can prove this by adding another object. So let's go in, and I have an object here that I wanted to add. So it says add this one in a comment. So we'll go back to our parts list and we'll add, and we'll just say that this part number is PN003, and we'll call this triangle 2, and we'll spell it right. Triangle 2. The description is a black right triangle. And reorder quantity, I don't know, 30. And then the drawing order I'm getting from this comment. So rather than typing this out, I'll just copy that, and we'll go back to our simulator, and we'll say paste it right in there. And then we say done. We add new part. And now we'll check to see if our drawing order gets parsed and drawn when we draw triangle 2. And there it is. What do you know? It works. So what we've done is we've kind of explained how 2D graphics works, how we draw these primitives. There are a lot more primitives, so you should look at all of those. But the important thing is that DrawRect draws a snapshot in this app of whatever we want to do. DrawRect we can use in various ways. We can draw arcs, we can draw circles, we can draw lines, we can draw paths, we can stroke the path rather than filling it. So the point of this whole unit is really not just drawing out of an array that we get out of a string that we pull from a database, but we can use DrawRect in a UI view to really draw anything we want in some very complex shapes. Thank you very much.